Well, welcome back, everybody. Most people spend their careers trying to avoid turbulence. They wait for the certainty. They wait for stability. They wait for the perfect plan. They wait for that storm to pass. And, I recently learned something about the bison, the animal, like the buffalo, right? When a storm approaches, most animals run the other way. The bison does the exact opposite. Their instinct tells them run into the storm. That's the fastest way to get to the other side. And I couldn't help but think about that as I prepared for today's podcast and today's guest. Over the last quarter century, David Burns has navigated Y2K, 9/11, economic booms and downturns, digital transformations of all varieties, the growth of GE, the breakup of GE, the creation of GE Aerospace, where he is now the CIO, and now the rise of AI. And through it all, David's continued to grow, to adapt, and to help others do the same. And so today's, I think, big takeaway for me and learning from David is how do great leaders create confidence, a learning mindset, growth, and the opportunity to grow and thrive in the middle of turbulence. So let's find out by welcoming David to the podcast. And David, welcome. And, people instinctively try to avoid turbulence. I get it. When you look back on your career, reflecting back, I see someone who has repeatedly moved toward it. New challenges, new businesses, new transformations. I'd love to just have you reflect on what have you learned about the value of moving toward turbulence, through turbulence, when everyone else is trying to avoid it.
Great. Well, Dan, first of all, let me just thank you for having me on. It's an honor and privilege to be here, and I'm excited to talk to you, and hopefully those listening will take something away from it. To your point about running towards turbulence, I got advice earlier in my career to run towards the toughest problems. And I was young, energetic, maybe a little bit dumb, and I did exactly that. And what my experience showed me through those experiences, the toughest problems are the ones that offer the greatest learning opportunity. And sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, but the learning opportunity that comes from hard problems is really priceless. And, at times I signed up for some challenges that I were fairly confident that I may not succeed in. I remember a few times I took jobs and I said, this is definitely the job that's going to take me out. And, I found the exact opposite was the case. Sometimes those hardest problems allowed me to learn and grow. And those learnings compounded over time is something that I believe has helped me accelerate my ability to lead an organization to successful ends. So I always have sort of looked at turbulence as a great learning opportunity for everyone involved.
Well, in the next few minutes, I'm hoping to unpack how can we all learn from that muscle, the mindset, how you got there. And, for anybody who knows folks from GE, especially from GE technology, you all seem to share common traits, right? And, one of those is you're remarkably comfortable with the uncertainty of things, right? And so, you're not just surviving change, you're running through it, you're growing through it. And so when you look back at the journey, David, just reflecting on it, what do you believe created this ability, this muscle, this comfort zone?
One word I would say, expectations. And, when I joined GE, and you got to go way back in time, this was back in the late 90s, GE was the most valuable company in the world. And I remember flying out to Minneapolis for my job interview. And so this was, I guess, 1997. And as I was flying out there, I was reading a Fortune magazine that on the cover was Jack Welch. And it talked about how GE, the most valuable company in the world, what made it so special. And I truly believe what did was the talent in the organization and the expectation of the people getting hired were going to be the best of the best. They were going to learn, they were going to grow, and they were going to do things that most companies wouldn't have the courage to try to tackle. And the company was known just for hiring and grooming great talent. And that's sort of why I wanted to join. I wanted to run with the best of the best. And GE just had an amazing thing and develop talent. And when you're surrounded by the best, it naturally forces you to raise your game. The expectations are high. And I think when you're surrounded by great people, you see them navigating through great challenges, through times of uncertainty. And it gives you the confidence that you can believe in yourself to do the same. And that's sort of what I've found over the course of my career is that those high expectations surrounded by great talent gives you the confidence to deliver and manage through uncertainty.
That's pretty special. And that great talent, obviously, GE has a high bar to get in the door, but it always puts a little grin on my face when I see someone from GE and you go to the beginning of their journey. What are you always going to find those first 2 years?
Yeah, when I think about the first couple years, it's an incredibly at the time when I joined GE, it was an incredibly large company. As of now, GE Aerospace, we're still a significantly large company. A lot to take in, a lot to learn. And for me, it was how could I accelerate that learning by talking to as many people as possible. You come into a complex organization, whether it's one of the organizations I grew up in or other big companies from people that may be listening into this podcast. You've just got to get a lay of the land and talk to as many people. And for me, that was a big part of it. How do you build a network quickly? So that way, when you don't have an answer, you know who you can call and get a little bit of coaching and advice from. And one of the things I've enjoyed about, the company that I've been part of, GE and now GE Aerospace, is it's the type of company where from a culture perspective, if you call and ask someone a question, a favor, they're always willing to help out. They're always willing to help lift you up because they've been lifted up by others.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we've got a number of really phenomenal mystery questioners, people who know you on different levels in different ways. And, I want to cue up this first one because it's going to help kind of build on what you just shared and also give us some more of the secret sauce of all the folks from GE. So let's listen to this first mystery question.
Hi, Dave. Like so many past, current, and future technology leaders at GE, you started your career on the 2-year technology leadership program, and you did so at a formative time with Y2K and 9/11 right around the corner. Can you talk a little bit about the early years and what being on GE's leadership program, especially with such global events on the horizon, shaped you as a leader and some of the key things you take with you today from that early experience?
Well, listen, that was Alf Cherry, who's the chief information officer of our commercial engines and services business here in GE Aerospace. He's it's our most important business line as far as size and scale within the company. And Alf's one of those leaders that works with me and that I have the opportunity to learn from every day. We're lucky to have him on the team, and I'm glad he asked the question. He is right. I did join GE on one of their leadership training programs. At the time, it was called the Information Management Leadership Program. We have effectively the same program today, nearly 30 years later, called the Digital Technology Leadership Program. And for those who may be listening that aren't familiar with it, basically it was a 2-year program, rotational program where people were hired largely out of college or recently out of college, and they move into a new role every 6 months. And what's great about the program and what was great when I went through it is it forced you through a learning process every 6 months. So over the course of 2 years, 4 different jobs, 6 months each. And what I always found great but challenging about it was, I was coming right out of college. I wanted to do big things. I wanted to have a big impact. I would get thrown into a rotation. I'd spend 4 or 5 months trying to learn what the heck the job was, what the technology was involved, what the business process was. Right about the time I started feeling like I was finally adding value, I would get pulled out and moved into a new rotation. And it was a little bit frustrating because I wanted to go take the learnings and apply them. But what I realized with the benefit of hindsight, that program wasn't about what I was going to deliver in any 6-month time period. That program was about developing leadership skills, taking me through 4 learning curves over 2 years, accelerated learning curves, to help me become a better leader down the road. And, as I reflected on my time on the program, I in 2 years went through 4 learning curves, while most of the individuals that I graduated college with in that same 2-year period went through 1 learning curve. So it was just a great accelerator, great leadership learning opportunity, and just a great way for me to figure out how to be a better leader for the roles that I would subsequently take.
Yeah, so good. Thank you so much, Alf. It's good to meet you through this process, and I appreciate that mystery question. And David, it didn't stop there, right? If I've done my math right, I think in your 25-year journey so far, 13 roles, right? So talk about charting the course, or how the course charted you, or, you know, uh, how much of this was planned, how much of it was just through preparation, kind of going back to that whole turbulence, right? Working through turbulence.
I had early on in my career, I thought I knew what the path was. I thought I knew exactly what I needed to do, how I needed to lay out my career to get myself to where I wanted to be 10, 15, 20, 25 years later. What I quickly learned is you can't fight the plan, you got to fight the fight. Everything that I thought was going to be on the path ended up not being as neat or as clean as I thought it would be. And, there was one time I was working at G Corporate at the time, and I was in Connecticut, and they were offering me big executive level roles, but I had never been to the industrial side of the company. And I knew I wanted to get to the industrial side of the company. So I effectively took a lateral, maybe to a lateral to down role to get to the industrial side of the company, because I knew I needed to round out my experiences. I think another example was I by nature love the business side of what technologists do. So as much as I am a technologist, I don't typically go home and like build computers and do a lot of coding in my spare time. I'm a lot more passionate about how you can apply technology to change your business. And so at one point in my career, I found myself really deep into a hardcore technical organization. And I'd been in that role for a while, and I was worried I was going to get myself typecast, that those were the only types of roles that I could do. And so I'd convinced myself the next role had to be closer to the business. Well, as luck would have it, a great opportunity popped up in that very technical organization. And when I first got the phone call about it, I was like, nope, not going to do it. It's not what was on my plan. And then I went home and I thought about it, and I said, you know what? That job rounds me out in a lot of ways that I need to be rounded out. And so that was the turning point in my career where my philosophy changed about my career path. And it was all about building skills and tackling hard problems like we talked about earlier, and just letting the world unfold around me and trying to figure out what I could do to add the most value for the company that I was working for, knowing that things would work out. So I now subscribe to the school of thought of build skills, build capabilities, and good things will naturally happen to you from a career perspective.
Well, David, I've got this, everyone knows this expression, but the proof's in the pudding, right? And you take everything you've shared so far, we're early on here, but if people studied the Fortune 150, we'll say, the number of CIOs who are former GEers, it's mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling, which just tells me all I need to know, right? It works. It's a leadership machine, and it still is today, which is so, so cool. So I've got this next mystery question from somebody who's one of my favorites out there. She is amazing. She's one of those people who's gone on to a Fortune, I think they're a Fortune 50, 60 company. So I'm giving you a little bit of a hint here before you hear the voice, but let's see if you recognize who this is, and you'll have fun with this question.
David, we both came through GE's technology leadership pipeline at a time when the CIO's job was largely about operational excellence, resiliency, execution, and today we're asked to lead AI transformation while we're still doing all those great things like running mission-critical business processes and systems. So, looking back at your career, what leadership beliefs served you well the first 25 years, but have required the biggest adjustment in this AI era?
Well, that's Monica Caldas, who's the CIO of Liberty Mutual, just an incredible leader, someone who she and I came up through the ranks together. And I just watched with amazement at how she took on bigger roles, managing really complex things. And you talk about someone who's just got grit, determination, courage, is a strategic thinker, just so many strengths to list, and a great person to have with that. And honestly, I love her question because it talks about how the role of the CIO has changed over at least the course of my career. When I joined GE, IT was a back office function and often reporting into maybe the CFO, chief financial officer of an operating unit. So it was somewhat managed as a cost center. And then you fast forward to where we are now, where digital is at the forefront of everything we're doing, especially in the age of AI. And the way I would answer Monica's question is this: what was expected of a CIO 25, 30 years ago is still expected of them today. CIOs have to be great operators. If I'm not keeping my business up and running and secure, nothing else matters. But I think what's interesting is now CIOs are expected to also be innovators as well. And I think I go back to Jim Collins, the famous author that talks about the power of the and versus the tyranny of the or. This is not a world where CIOs can choose to be either an operator or an innovator. You have to be both, and you have to leverage the power of the and. So I look at today's CIOs as being, how are you an operator and an innovator? And for a lot of my early on in my career, I had to be a great operator. Now in an age of AI, especially how fast things are changing, I've got to be the one bringing innovation into our company, challenging our business to think differently, because that's what's expected of the role. And that was definitely not what was expected of the role 28 years ago or whatever it was when I joined this company originally.
Amazing. Thanks for the reminder of the Collins quote there, the power of the and versus the tyranny of the or. Just such good nuggets. And thank you, Monica. She was my guest, episode 59. She absolutely crushed it. I recommend people going back and listening to that. So
I remember listening to that one. She did do very well.
It was awesome. Yeah. So David, I had some really great help from one of your great colleagues there, Laura Olson, who did a little detective work, a little undercover work. And one thing she did is she talked to your team, and they shared some of their favorite Davidisms, some of their favorite CIOisms that you share. So I'm gonna, she gave me a long list of them that, when in the beauty of these is when a leader shares these, everyone understands what it means, right? It just has that clarity. It really speeds to decision making. And so I'd love to have you maybe just unpack a couple of them. If I could just throw a couple of my favorites at you. One is success is when we are a leadership team, not a team of leaders. Talk about that. What does that look like, and how do you differentiate those?
What I've come to learn is business is a team sport. And anytime it becomes about an individual's personal agenda or their individual personality, the team doesn't thrive. The times when I've been seen a team be most effective is when everyone in the room is rowing in the same direction. Everyone's personal agendas are put to the side, and they're focused on the collective good, not the individual good. So that's really what it's all about. And I always encourage my team, we need to be a leadership team, not a team of leaders. And listen, it's hard because a lot of people come up, their individual accomplishments is what have made them successful. But at the end of the day, when you're leading at scale, it's got to be about the greater good.
Yeah. And when I spoke with Alf, he shared some of those, the secret sauce there on the team. So proof positive. Another one of the great Davidisms probably goes back to your early things you share with us, but you say the standard we walk past is the standard we accept.
Yeah. So that quote is all about discipline. And so I've been a student of lean manufacturing now for probably over 10 years. And I was introduced to it before that, but I really started getting deep about 10 years ago. And GE Aerospace, over the last 5 years, has really embraced it. We've got a proprietary lean operating system, which we call Flight Deck, which has really just been how do we drive continuous improvement? And one thing I've come to learn as fact in all of my experiences with lean manufacturing and what we're doing with Flight Deck, that as stated by the father of the Toyota production system, Taichi Ono, without standards, there can be no improvement. And so what I really try to instill on people is you've got to have standard processes in place for you to drive continuous improvement. Trying to continuously improve chaos just won't happen. And so that's really where we're trying to focus on how can we make sure we have good standards in place that we're continuously improving over time. And that's really what that's referring to.
Yeah. Thank you again, Laura, for the help with those. And you made me think of the power of clarity in times of chaos and turbulence, right? And so how do you create clarity when things are maybe not be even clear for yourself, right? I mean, these are new times, different times. Every day we wake up, the world's changed, right? In different ways. So how do you create that so that the whole notion of confused minds don't act? We can't afford to have any of our people not acting, mobilizing today. So how do you do that so well, David?
Listen, one of the things that I try to make sure we do as an organization is to make sure people are clear on the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. And there's always more demand than there is supply in the organization. And, it's interesting. I've actually found that in times when you're leading through turbulence or leading through crisis, it's actually a little bit easier because crisis brings focus. And when you're focused on whatever is most important, you can drive change. And sometimes you may not know, especially in a crisis, what is the most important problem to be focused on. But to have the courage of focusing on what you believe based on what you know is the most important thing and change if you're wrong and focus on what you're better informed becomes really important. So for me, it's all about in times of ambiguity, in times of crisis, just have the courage to say, listen, this is where we need to focus. This is what's most important for the customer. And keeping a customer lens on things, because typically if you take care of your customer, you can cut through a lot of ambiguity that can get built up in big hierarchical organizations to know what is the right thing to be doing. So I always say focus on what matters for the customer. Take advantage of a crisis. If you're in a crisis, figure out what you believe is the most important thing to focus on and focus maniacally on it. And it tends on helping people see through the ambiguity that might exist.
Brilliant. I love that. And, we've got another mystery question too, keyed up for you right now that I think is going to kind of take this to another level and just how this is the defining moment for our profession, for CIOs today, right? And I don't like to call it the AI era, but it's certainly well defined in that way. But listen to this next mystery questioner and someone who's in the fight with you every day. So check this one out.
The entire space of AI is changing, if not on a daily basis, definitely at a very, very high frequency mode. My question to you is, how are you keeping pace with what is happening in this technology space and what is relevant to what you're trying to drive and what is noise? How do you separate the real versus noise?
Well, listen, that was Dinakar Deshmukh, who's our vice president of data science and analytics. And it's ironic. He's the one asking me that question because he's the one that teaches me about AI every day. And to take a minute to brag on him a little bit, he was recently just named the Information Technologist of the Year by the Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers. So not only do I think highly of him, a large set of his peers think pretty highly of him as well. But he brings up a good question, and it's something he and I talk about a lot. With the pace that things are changing in the AI era, it's incredibly hard. And I've always believed that you need to be learning as fast as things are changing. And I thought that was hard 5 or 10 years ago when we were talking about cloud and mobile. And now we're at a point where things are changing so fast in the world of AI, it's daily things are evolving. You got new models being launched. We'll probably have 4 new models launched this month. Like, how do you keep up with it? Gets to be hard. There's a few things that I tend to do to try to separate the signal from the noise. One is talking to great technologists like Dinakar. I also spend a lot of time talking to other CIOs and technology leaders just to listen, knowing that I don't have all the answers, knowing that we in the company don't have all the answers, talking to a lot of companies, big tech firms. And one of the unique things that I do is I usually meet with a small startup once per month. I get dozens of cold calls a week. I will generally pick one a month that I meet with, just randomly. just to make sure I have a pulse of how startups are operating. What are companies doing? So those are a couple ways that I'm talking to people. I also do what most people do, listen to podcasts. And, the other thing that I try to do is use some of the technology. I use Claude and ChatGPT a lot just to help me think through how do I sort through the signal through the noise. I've got a Claude skill that on a daily basis, I go through what are the signals out there that I may be missing that are on the internet that I should be aware of as the CIO of a large aerospace and defense company. So one of the things is I've started doing is use the technology to help me find the signal through the noise.
Yeah, really good. And Dineker, appreciate the very thoughtful question. And you probably knew the answer because you're in the thick of it with David, but enjoy spending some time with him at Keith Ferrazzi's Radical Innovators Summit here not too long ago. And yeah, you've got a great teammate there, as you know, David.
Yes, we do. We're lucky to have him.
I kind of pick up on that a little bit. I read some things you shared in a recent Barron's article where you described AI as an accelerator, and I'd love to get your cut on that. I mean, I think we all kind of understand that theoretically, but you guys have been doing this for a long time. You've been working on this, data science, analytics, machine learning. You've been doing this for a while. So, taking that experience, how is that an accelerator for you in GE Aerospace?
Yeah, I guess I'd start. We are lucky in GE Aerospace. We've been using data science for the better part of almost 15 years to analyze data coming off of our assets. So that way we can optimize the performance of those assets for the betterment of our customers. And so we had a capability around machine learning and artificial intelligence before the generative AI boom hit us. And I think what we found with generative AI, the population of problems we could solve with that technology expanded greatly. We would do machine learning looking for a specific condition in an engine. So we'd have one model for one problem. Now you've got one model that can solve many problems. So just the aptitude of issues we can solve is much broader. And the way I think about it, what AI is helping us accelerate, I'll go back to how we think about continuous improvement in our company. One is about waste elimination. And then when you eliminate waste, you've got the steps that add value for your customers. How do you accelerate those steps? So our proprietary lean operating model, Flight Deck, helps us find waste in our systems and eliminate that waste so we can focus on the value-added steps for our customers. We're then using AI to help accelerate those value-added steps so we can get products and capabilities in the hands of our customers faster. So to put it simply, AI has given us the ability to accelerate the value-added steps in our process. That could be around designing a part, a new design for a part that's better for our customers faster. Designing a whole new product in a new way. Turning around commercial proposals for our customers faster. There's any one of our business processes we can apply AI to make us better and more responsive for our customers. And the fact that we have a foundation that's almost 15 years old to build upon is just a stepping stone that enables us to do that, what we believe is better than most.
Yeah. Earlier we talked about your early days, your early journey, the beneficiary of a lot of great exposures and mentoring and development. You pay that forward today, and you've got a couple thousand digital technology professionals that are doing all this amazing work. So maybe just love on them a little bit, Dave, 'cause I know you're very fond of them, you're very proud of them, and take us inside. What's a day in the life of a GE Aerospace technology professional look like?
Well, listen, first and foremost, what I'd tell you is a company, we do things that matter for the world. And I think that's motivating for every one of our more than 2,000 digital technology professionals that come in every day, as well as all of our other employees in the company beyond digital technology. Just to put it in perspective for those listening, as a company, GE Aerospace and our JV partners power about 75% of all commercial flights around the world. And we power about 2/3 of all US military aircraft. So when you step back and you think about it, as I'm sitting here talking to you, Dan, that's about 1 million souls dependent upon our technology right now, flying in the air. It's a tremendous responsibility and it's a tremendous privilege that we take seriously. So every day our resources come in looking to how do we become more reliable for those operators, for those airline customers, for all the war fighters around the world that defend freedom every single day. And so for that, that's what our team rallies around. There's a lot we need to do to support the large, complex business we have. There's a lot we're focused on technology, but a lot of it is how do we keep our existing technology up and running so we can be manufacturing more parts, more products for our customers every day. The one thing I will tell you and what we strive to do as a company, and this is, I'll go back to what I said earlier about, why I joined GE. GE was known as being a ability to develop and grow talent. One of the things is GE Aerospace became our own standalone company and separated from some of the other GE businesses that have now all been set up as standalone independent companies. We've held on in GE Aerospace to this concept of being world-class developers of talent. So as our people come in every day, we expect them to be delivering things for our customers, but we're also investing back in them, helping them grow. So we talked about we're in an age of AI where things are changing quickly. We're investing a lot in our talent, making sure we're exposing them to the latest and greatest talent. So they're not only doing things that matter for the world, doing things that matter for the flying public, doing things that matter for the warfighter, but we're also investing back in them to help them grow to be the best that they can be. It's one of the things why I stayed with GE as long as I did and why I'm still here with GE Aerospace. The company was always willing to invest in me, and we're committed to investing in our people as part of the normal course of business.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, I understand that you will go to great lengths to have fun with your people, to help them connect, to help them, on a human level. And we heard from Alf Cherry earlier, and he told me kind of tongue in cheek, he says, get David talking about karaoke. And also, one of your former GE colleagues, Chris Drumgoole, told me a story about hot wings. Like you did something with hot wings that you paid the price for later that probably no one ever knew about, but you'll do crazy things. So talk about that.
Yeah. So listen, you can't take life too seriously. You got to have fun at work. We all spend a lot of our time at work with our colleagues. So I've always taken the approach of make sure you're having fun doing what you're doing. For me, what I'd tell you is, and this is something I learned from my father early on in my life, and I'll never forget it. He told me you've got to treat the person who takes the trash out as well as you treat your boss or the CEO of a company with respect. And so I've just always had that sort of ingrained in me that you've always got to show respect for people. And a good way to do that, a good way to get the best out of people, to help them be their best, is to make sure you know them on a personal level. And I've always tried to make deep personal connections with people. And with some of that comes a little fun. So I'll go to the karaoke comment that Alf made. I try to have a holiday party for my extended leadership team every year. And there's some members of my extended leadership team that love to sing and dance. So I'll go out and make sure I'll be the first one on the floor trying to get people up there dancing. And I assure you, I am not a good dancer. I'll be the first one trying to get up there, singing a song, trying to get other people to sing just to have a little fun. And it's not because I love to get up and sing and dance. Trust me, it's not my forte, but I know it breaks the ice. So those people that want to do it can enjoy those moments. I like to be a little bit of an instigator, just knowing what will make them happy. And in the case of the hot wings that Chris was telling you about, I was asked to do, there's, I guess, a podcast out there called Hot Wings where they do interviews and you eat slowly buffalo wings of increasing temperature. And I am not someone who likes hot food, spicy food. But I agreed to do it because it was a way for me to make myself available on a more personal level to some of the members that were going through that leadership training program we talked about earlier. And so over the course of this probably 45-minute interview that was recorded all on video, I had to eat 10 buffalo wings of increasing spiciness. Probably once I got past the second one, I was out of my league what I was capable of doing, but I did it. And it was a way to kind of build a personal connection with all of those DTLPs, those digital technology leadership program members, and make a personal connection. That way, every time I went and saw them in the hallway or something, they had something that they were comfortable talking to me about. They could ask me about some of the pieces of advice I gave on that or what my experience was like doing it. And, it was maybe again, my favorite thing in the world to do, especially when I got to the ninth and 10th hot wing, but it was a good experience. And I assure you, I was taking a lot of Tums at the end of the day after all those wings.
I think Chris said he was with you later, and you paid a very dear price. You were all red and just suffering, but you did
I
it for
was
the
not
team,
feeling
man,
good.
and it's so good. And I've got another mystery questioner. Again, someone who's been on this journey with you, been in the trenches with you, going back to Cincinnati days where you're at, but where he was at the time. And again, some more of the, I think just the work hard, play hard style that's worked so well for you in a sustained way. So you can know who this is right away. So check it out.
Hi, Dave. I know we've gotten a chance to work together quite a bit over the years. And one of the things that I love about your leadership style is that you very much take a work hard, play hard mentality. And I always remember the time that you filled my office with leaves, and it took me a few days to clean up. And I think my office probably still smells like leaves back in Cincinnati. But I appreciate the fact that you like to bring the best out of people, and you like to create environments where people feel safe to bring their whole self to work. So my question to you is, what advice do you have for other leaders who are looking to create that same environment?
Yeah, and so that is James Ross, who's the chief digital technology officer at Phillips 66. He's been in that role for a couple years and a good friend, a great person who I've known a long time, and I've had the opportunity to see him grow. And he's actually got the uncanny ability to do exactly what he was just referring to. I don't know if he learned it from me or if he was just a partner of crime, or maybe I followed him a little bit. But you know, I've always tried to make sure, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, is don't take yourself too seriously. Have some fun. I assure you, people remember the good times and the laughs you all have together far longer than the bad meetings you may have or go lives that don't go well. I do remember it was fall and we were in an office building where the windows were all closed, but we thought it would be funny after I was raking leaves in my at my house just to bring in a couple bags of leaves before James got into the office and cover up his office with leaves, and then hang some signs around the building reminding people to keep their windows closed. And so I suspect there are still some leaves in that office, if I'm not mistaken. But having a little fun is never a bad thing. And again, it's a way to humanize and personalize connectivities. The other thing I'd just say in response to James's question, just as a leader, you set the tone for the environment. And I've always tried to make sure I take the time to be empathetic, look for nonverbal signs about if someone on the team's struggling and just check in with them. It's important you do that as a leader because you got to know, hey, is someone just got too much on their plate right now? They're not set up to be their best, and create that environment where people feel like they can do what they need to do to help the end customer and be great at what they do. And then I guess the last thing I'd just say is how you show up is how others will show up. I generally try to be very authentic, bring my whole self to work. There's days I come in and I've had a bad day, and I'm not afraid to talk about that. There's also days I come in where I've had a great day. My kids accomplished something at home, or I just had we had a good go live or something. Celebrate those. I think people know whether you're being real or not. And so I've just always found being authentic, telling people when we're having a hard time, telling people when you're having a great time, it opens them up to do the same. So that way they can be their best. At the end of the day, people don't work for robots. They work for people. And I always encourage leaders to give yourself a little grace to be human, and you'll find your people do the same.
Yeah, that grace thing is so important today for yourself and for others around you. And thank you, James. I just saw a post from James right before we got on the podcast with him, his team doing the road show out in the sites, doing the same kinds of things. So it's not fall yet, so we'll have to get some leads for James this fall. But I think you kind of alluded to the highs and the lows, right? Sometimes it's in the day, sometimes it's in our careers. And in the introduction of the podcast, I talked about the comparison to the bison, right? Which the bison is so fascinating. They charge into the storms, right? It's not the easiest thing to do. All the other animals go the other way, try to get away from it, right? The bison knows the best way to get to the other side is to go right through it. So another mystery questioner from what I'll say is a fellow bison. And love this person like I do. And he'll actually be on the podcast again this fall. But let's listen in and get some more perspective around working through the storms.
Dave Burns, glad to see you sharing your story with the Tech Whisperers podcast. It's been a very long time since we sat in a cube farm together, humbly in Cincinnati, Ohio. But congratulations on a great run. You, more than anyone, have seen the most business cycles, the shortest cycles, and the longest cycles. You've led at the very top of these business cycles and at the lowest lows of those business cycles. I wonder if you'd share with the team what leadership traits you feel like needed to sustain in all scenarios and what have needed to change so that you could be as effective as possible.
Well, that was Aaron Powell, the CDO over at Marathon Petroleum, a great friend, a great leader. He's someone who I learned a ton from. When I first came to work at the time, what was known as GE Aviation, what is now GE Aerospace, I had never worked in a long cycle business. And he taught me a lot that I still lean on to this day. And I still call him for advice. So he's a great leader. And I would encourage whenever he's on Tech Whispers, everyone would be well served listening in to him. I love his question. I have led long cycle businesses, short cycle businesses, through ups and downs. It's been a roller coaster, a fun ride, one I wouldn't trade for anything. A couple traits that I would say have carried through in all scenarios, whether it's the good times, bad times, long cycle, short cycle, learning has been at the core of everything for me. And if you're not learning, you're not moving forward. And if you're not moving forward in this world, you're moving backwards. So the one constant through it all has been a desire to continuously learn. And I think that's one thing from a leadership perspective that has helped me. It's one of the reasons why it's so fun being a leader right now in this age of AI. No one has all of the answers. So the learning opportunity is just enormous. I think another trait I would say in response to Aaron's question is just coaching. I learned early that if all I was doing was directing people versus coaching them and teaching them, I quickly became a bottleneck. And so as I took on roles of more responsibility, I learned it was less about what I was personally doing. It was more about how I was lifting those up around me, coaching others to be able to deliver for the company. And that's in the good times and the bad times, you got to be coaching up those around you. One thing that I would say you do have to sometimes adjust based on the situation is how directive you are. I have had to manage businesses through crises in the past and through some severe turbulence, Dan, to use your term. And sometimes in a crisis, you don't necessarily have all the time to coach and to let their own answers. You've got to be a little bit more directive. But the key is to understand and not to trick yourself to think you're always in a crisis where you always need to be directive, telling people what to do, but rather differentiating when you need to be more directive, telling people, hey, listen, this is what needs to get done tomorrow to put out this fire, versus where you coach people up, lift them up, grow their capabilities so they're learning to fish on their own versus you're fishing for them.
Amazing question, Aaron. Thank you so much. And 20-year experience at GE, another one of the great leaders out there that came through the GE, that whole heritage, right? That whole model you talked about. You mentioned long cycle business. Just for the audience, your products are like something that an engine that you sell today will be in service for how long?
So engines can be in service for 25 to 40 years, there's some products that were designed 50, 60 years ago that are still flying today. So it's truly a long cycle business. When we as a company make a decision to launch a new product, it can be a 10 to 15 year new product introduction cycle. I mean, what we do is incredibly technically challenging. And that's why we've got some of the best engineers in the world, or what I'm confident are the best engineers in the world, out there designing those products. So that way, those people that are flying on them 30, 40, 50 years from now are getting the benefits of all of the great minds we have working on them today.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I had a sense that it was going to be something, just incredible like that. I think about you're this incredible leader, as we've heard from so many people. You're also a human, and so I'm just wondering how you stay grounded. How do you, keep that grounding and sustainable leadership the way that you do? And so we've got one more special mystery questioner who's going to help us land this plane. So listen in, you're going to know this person right away.
Dave, I know your wife Jen has been your biggest friend, mentor, coach, and dietitian. Can you talk about the importance of your relationship and the role it's played in your success?
Well, I was Jim Fowler, who is just an incredible leader. He's been probably, no one has been a bigger influence on my career than Jim. And he's now over at Lumen doing great things on their product side of their house. But just someone who I am incredibly grateful for. And he does hit on probably the single biggest thing that has made me successful is my wife. I wouldn't have the opportunity, the honor and privilege to lead the team that I do and be part of GE Aerospace if not for her. Coincidentally, she and I did meet on my first day at GE. So she was on the leadership training program when I joined. And I always say that everything great I have in my life is due to GE, and largely because I had the opportunity to meet my wife at the company. And she's just been an incredible source of stability for my family, for my kids. I'm lucky I have 3 great kids who keep me grounded every single day. And to keep your point, my kids keep my ego in check pretty simply, as does my wife. But listen, without that support system, there's no way I could do what I end up doing. After we had our 3rd kid, my wife and I made the choice she was going to stay home, help take care of the family and house while I did this. We are a complete team. Sometimes I'm not as balanced as I should be. I owe better to them than what I do, but she's incredible, helps me every single day, keeps me grounded, reminds me about what's most important. And I think just everyone needs a few of those rocks in their life. And my wife is the rock for me.
Well, it sounds like we were both fortunate to marry up,
Yes.
David, right? And
Yes,
I don't
no-
say that because my wife's going to listen to the podcast because she doesn't. But hopefully you and Jen and the kids can have a movie night when this comes out, and you can enjoy this together. It's a great story.
They will mock me incessantly.
I love it. Well, Jim Fowler, thank you. You've had so much impact on so many people. Went from GE Group CIO, Global CIO, to had a great run at Nationwide. And as you say, now over at Lumen Technologies. He was my guest number 65. So go back and listen to Jim's episode. Really, really amazing. David, part of your DNA, part of your success story 25 years ago today is around learning, developing people. And I think this next section is going to be really fun for you. It's our Tech for Good scholarship, right? And to date, we've been so blessed to be able to commit over $500,000. I think we're way past that now in scholarships to over 40 nonprofits, STEM nonprofits. So today, as you know, you've got the ability to gift a seat in our TechLX leadership program. It's a cohort-based program to one of your favorite STEM groups. So does anybody come to mind who you'd like to gift that to?
Yeah, we work with a group called the Greater Cincinnati STEM Collaborative. They focus on students from K to 12, driving STEM-based education. It's all in partnership with the University of Cincinnati's Center for Youth Futures. they connect partners in education and really just try to drive more students into STEM education. And that's something important for us, whether it's in Cincinnati, which is where our global headquarters is, our global locations. We've got over 100 of them around the globe. We need great technologists. We need people who are embracing STEM. And I firmly believe that the future will be defined by how many people embrace science, technology, engineering, and math. And that's just one group we work with that we're proud to partner with GE Aerospace, and I think would be great to participate with TechLX.
That's amazing. So what's the organization name again?
It's the Greater Cincinnati STEM Collaborative.
Fantastic. Well, we will be amplifying their story, given their great work, both through my social media and just so excited to be introduced to them and have them plugged in. And yeah, so David, I kind of want to put a bow on this with kind of the legacy question, and as I've listened to your colleagues over the last few minutes, as they talk about you, there's certain things that really jump out at me that really struck me. There was no talk about technology per se, right? It was all about people. It was about the opportunities, the environment, the culture, the confidence that you gave them. I think the experiences that they probably remember more later than they might even do now. So when it's all said and done, what do you hope people remember about the way you helped them navigate their storms to kind of work through their own turbulence?
I was lucky to have many people coach me through the years. All of the mystery guests you just have had on and many more. And without the coaching of those individuals, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have grown. I wouldn't have gotten the scars. I wouldn't have gotten picked up after I got knocked down without them. So, at the end of the day, I can only hope that one day down the road, people who have worked with me will feel that I helped them in some small way be successful. As a leader, your impact is not measured by what you do, but rather what those around you do. And I can only hope one day that some people will feel that I helped coach them up to do what they were capable of doing to achieve their full potential, much like all of your mystery guests have in some way, shape, or form helped coach me up to be the leader that I am today.
Well, that's a great way to put a bow on this. And I would also maybe just spin it a slightly different way. And I'll share a quick story. Jackie Joyner Kersey, St. Louis based. We know the success she had in the Olympics, right? Well, she had success. I forget which Olympics it was. Had great success. And then it becomes, do you do it again? Do you go through that 4 years of training? And she decided that she thought she could be better. But what she talks about is, you talk about coaching, but she talks about being coachable. You are coachable, right? And you talk about continuous improvement, right? Like she would focus every day on being 1/10 of 1 second faster. I mean, how cool is that, right? But I just find that people who are coachable, who are learning that learning mindset, are really special. So you wouldn't say that about yourself, but I just did. So there you go.
Thank you very much. That's nice of you to say. I'm not sure my wife would agree with you that I'm coachable, but hopefully others would.
So good. Well, thank you to Jen and all of our mystery guests, and thank you to David again for spending time. I know you're going 100 miles an hour and a lot going on, but thanks for making the time and sharing your story and this special GE story as well.
Glad to be here, and I appreciate all you do, Dan, to amplify the message of all the great leaders. I get the opportunity to learn as I listen in on your podcast, so thank you for what you do.
Well, that was an amazing conversation. Thanks so much, David Burns. And his answer early on to what has made GE such an amazing company, such a sustaining company. If you remember right, he talked about expectations, having high expectations. And I'm going to be honest, I had very high expectations coming into today. And David just excelled at every turn, and I appreciate him for that. And while he spoke about doing the things he needs to do to be coachable, to be continuously learning, to be curious and have that courage, it's really what he's done to help other people do the same. How he's built leaders, how he's built confidence, how he's created opportunities for other people. And so as I think about working through a world of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, I don't think clear skies are the goal. I think today's world, It's all about becoming that kind of leader that help others thrive no matter what the weather is that comes next. So David and I are going to spend some time. We're going to work on his article for CIO.com. We're going to go dig deeper into how GE Aerospace is making AI a true business accelerator, customer accelerator, employee accelerator. So until next time, I wish you all well.